Imagine you're one of the most respected scientists in the world. Year 1869. You've just discovered the most spectacular marine fossil ever found. 12 meters of prehistoric reptile. Complete reconstruction, scientific publication, presentation to the academic community. Everything perfect, except for one tiny detail. You put the head where the tail should be. And this embarrassing mistake initiated one of the most legendary rivalries in paleontology history, a war that would define the field for decades. But here's what's really impressive. This wasn't even the worst case of scientists interpreting prehistoric creatures in a completely spectacularly wrong way. Welcome to the story of the greatest paleontological misconceptions of all time, and some of them persist to this day. The inverted head. Edward Drinker Cope, respected name, brilliant paleontologist, 1869. He has in his hands something extraordinary, a massive marine fossil that will cement his legacy. 12 meters of pure prehistoric nightmare with the longest neck ever documented in any reptile. Cope is euphoric. This will be his moment of glory. And then his brain freezes. He looks at that endless sequence of vertebrae, 72 cervical bones in perfect line. No known reptile had a neck that absurdly long. So Cope makes a perfectly logical decision when confronted with the impossible. This isn't a neck, it's obviously a tail. Makes total sense, right? Head goes on the short end, tail goes on the long end. Basic anatomy. Cope publishes his findings, detailed illustrations, public lectures, displays his short-necked sea monster to anyone willing to listen. He's on top of the world, until Othniel Charles Marsh shows up.
Marsh, Cope's mortal rival, and the type of person who probably corrects your grammar at parties, examines the reconstruction and starts laughing. Not a polite scientist laugh, a genuine guffaw, tears streaming down his face, because Cope had assembled a 12-meter marine reptile with its head turned backward. The humiliation was instant and brutal. Marsh made sure everyone knew about Cope's little mistake. Academic conferences turned into roast sessions, scientific journals transformed into gossip tabloids. This single error launched what historians now call the Bone Wars, a decades-long rivalry between two grown men who really should have acted more maturely. But this inverted neck wasn't even close to the most bizarre case, because wait until you see the death spiral that confused experts for over a century. 2. The spiral mystery. In 1899, paleontologists unearthed something that defied all logic. A perfect spiral composed entirely of razor-sharp teeth and absolutely no clue about which animal it belonged to. This was Helicoprion. They turned the fossil upside down, held it against the light, analyzed it for months. Nothing. First theory? It's a shell, like those snail spirals. Perfectly reasonable hypothesis, except that shells generally aren't made of teeth designed to slice flesh. If this was a snail, it was basically a Beyblade built with razor blades. Once the mollusk theory was discarded, the real fun began.
The next few years were a disturbing game of pin the organ, except instead of a tail on a donkey, it was a circular saw made of teeth, and instead of a donkey, it was some unknown prehistoric monster. Theory 1, nasal saw. Obviously, this creature had a circular saw coming out of its face. Terrifying, but logical. Didn't work. Theory 2, tail weapon. Maybe it was some kind of defense, like a medieval flail, only with more teeth and worse intentions. Still ridiculous. Theory 3, dorsal fin. Yes, let's put the death spiral on the back. That'll show who's boss. Nothing. For over 100 years, scientists kept moving this thing around, trying to find where it belonged. Museums had to constantly update displays. Textbooks were rewritten every decade. Then, 2013 happened. CT scans finally revealed the truth, and it was much stranger than anyone imagined. The spiral wasn't projecting outward, it was hidden inside the throat, functioning as some kind of organic meat slicer, an internal tooth mill that processed prey as they were swallowed. 100 years,
Dozens of theories, hundreds of reconstructions, and the answer was inside the mouth all along. 3. The giant turtle that never existed. Mongolian desert, 1950s. Soviet scientists discover fossilized claws. 90-centimeter claws the size of baseball bats. Sharp curves absolutely colossal. And paleontologist Yevgeny Malayev's obvious conclusion, giant turtle. Of course, makes total sense. In Malayev's head, this creature lived in the ocean and used these monstrous claws to harvest seaweed. Normal turtle stuff, you know how it is. Malayev was so confident in his theory that he created an entire family of turtles just for this creature, called it Therizinosaurus, scythe lizard. Apparently, even the name had to sound like farming equipment, and the scientific community simply accepted it. Textbooks were updated, museums built displays. For 25 years, everyone agreed that somewhere in the prehistoric oceans swam a school bus-sized turtle with claws capable of cutting steel. The turtle theory finally died in the 1980s when paleontologists found more bones.
Spoiler: the Therizinosaurus wasn't a turtle, it was a dinosaur. A theropod, actually, from the same group that gave us T-Rex and Velociraptor, except this one decided to go hippie and eat plants instead of meat. And those 90-centimeter claws weren't for harvesting seaweed, they were for pulling tree branches down and maybe convincing other dinosaurs to leave it alone. Hard to argue with something that has pocket knives for fingers. And the most interesting part? Therizinosaurus probably had feathers. So we went from imagining a giant turtle swimming through the ocean to a 9-meter feathered dinosaur that looked like Big Bird's nightmare cousin. 25 years completely wrong, all because someone couldn't imagine claws that large on anything but a turtle. 4. The king lizard that was a whale. Basilosaurus, king lizard. Impressive name, even terrifying. Small problem, it's a whale, and we're stuck with that name forever because of scientific bureaucracy. In 1834, Richard Harlan found massive fossilized bones in Alabama, immediately thought giant sea serpent, named it Basilosaurus, case closed. 5 years later, Richard Owen examined the same bones and noticed something strange. The teeth had 2 roots. Reptiles don't have teeth with 2 roots, mammals do. Owen tried to correct the error, suggesting renaming it Zeuglodon, which actually meant whale. But science has rules. First name wins, even if it's completely wrong. So now we have a 24-meter whale called king lizard swimming through the history books, and there's nothing anyone can do about it. The whole lizard thing made sense at first glance. Basilosaurus was huge and serpentine with a tiny head. It looked exactly like what you'd expect from a prehistoric sea monster. Museums mounted it with fins in the wrong places. Children probably had nightmares about the king lizard coming to eat them.
Nobody wanted to admit they'd been calling a whale a lizard for decades. Even after the evidence piled up, some scientists continued insisting it had to be some kind of reptile because changing your mind is apparently harder than defying basic biology. And the funniest part? Basilosaurus still had tiny hind legs, useless flippers hanging off the back that served no purpose except to remind everyone that whales used to walk on land. It's evolution's way of keeping receipts. 5. The giants that lived in swamps. For 50 years, everyone knew exactly how Brontosaurus lived. These massive creatures spent their days standing in swamps because they were too heavy for dry land and used their long necks as snorkels. Made perfect sense to the intellectual scientific community. Something that weighs 30 tons obviously can't walk around on solid ground without sinking into the earth, right? Water would support all that weight. Besides, look at that neck, clearly designed to breathe while submerged up to the eyes. Museums built entire exhibitions around this idea. Artists painted countless images of Brontosaurus herds relaxing in prehistoric lakes, necks raised like periscopes. Charles R. Knight painted the definitive Brontosaurus in 1897, standing chest-deep in water, looking completely at home. This painting influenced how people saw dinosaurs for decades, lazy giants who couldn't be bothered to get out of the pool. There was just one small problem with this entire theory: physics. Water pressure increases as you go deeper. Everyone knows this. You feel it in your ears when you dive to the bottom of a pool. Now imagine being a 30-ton animal trying to breathe through a tube while your chest is crushed by tons of water pressure. Your lungs would collapse instantly. You'd suffocate before you could take a single breath. But nobody thought about this for half a century. When researchers finally tested the theory, they realized that Brontosaurus could absolutely support their weight on land. Their leg bones were thick and strong. Their feet were wide and cushioned.
Everything about their anatomy screamed terrestrial animal. The neck that everyone thought was a snorkel was actually used to reach the tops of tall plants. And that tail that everyone drew dragging, they kept it raised off the ground, probably using it for balance, and as a weapon against anything stupid enough to attack a 30-ton herbivore. 50 years imagining dinosaurs as giant hippos, all because nobody did the pressure calculations. 6. The cannibal that never ate babies. In the New York subway system, there's a mosaic showing Coelophysis eating its own baby. It's been there for decades. Thousands of people see it every day. It's completely wrong. The whole cannibalism story started in the 1950s when Edwin Colbert found a mass grave of Coelophysis skeletons at Ghost Ranch, New Mexico. Hundreds of these small dinosaurs had died together, probably from drought or flood. Inside the rib cages of 2 adults, Colbert found small bones. His conclusion? These dinosaurs were eating their own young before dying. Case closed. The story spread everywhere. Textbooks included sinister illustrations of adult Coelophysis tearing apart juveniles. Museums mounted displays about dinosaur cannibalism. For 60 years, Coelophysis was the symbol of prehistoric family dysfunction. Nobody bothered to recheck the evidence until 2006, when researchers finally re-examined those Ghost Ranch fossils and found 2 big problems with the cannibalism theory. Problem 1? The gut contents weren't actually inside the stomach. The bones were underneath the adult skeleton. A larger dinosaur had simply fallen on top of a smaller one. Death by crushing, not death by eating.
Problem 2. The small bones weren't even from baby Coelophysis. One was from a primitive crocodile, the other was too large and the wrong shape. So what really happened? An adult Coelophysis ate a small crocodile for lunch, then died in a mass extinction event. Normal predatory behavior, not family cannibalism. The correction was published in scientific journals. Researchers updated their papers, and the cannibalism theory officially died. The subway mosaic is still there. Textbooks still mention it sometimes, and the internet is full of articles about cannibal dinosaurs that were never updated. 60 years as a baby eater, all because someone misidentified lunch as infanticide. And that's the inconvenient truth about science. Cope put the head on backward. Scientists spent 100 years trying to figure out where to put spiral teeth. They confused dinosaur claws with a giant turtle, called a whale a lizard for 150 years. So if this journey through paleontology's greatest mistakes made you see science differently, if you were shocked by how many times we got it wrong about the same creatures, leave that like. And it's not just for the video, it's because content like this that shows you behind the scenes of science, the mistakes, the failures, the humanity behind the discoveries, only reaches more people when you show the algorithm it's worthwhile. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell, because these paleontological errors are just the tip of the iceberg. There's the story of Spinosaurus, which changed completely 3 times in the last 20 years, and we still don't know if it's right. Thanks, and see you next time. Oh,